All of a sudden, those iterations that they have to do on a job, and there might be 100 iterations, you know, and you're doing that per frame, all of a sudden they're like, my budget's completely gone out the window, you know, and whether it was AWS or whoever, you know, they're like, I've had to make all these changes, keep on re-rendering, and I've just blown my budget.
Yeah.
So I stand by this like really firmly, that I think that hybrid model, you've got your local compute, right? So that's, you know, we call it agile compute. That's kind of our key phrase now. That's next to you. And that investment that you've made into that machine, it's not going anywhere, it's with you. So if you're getting that project up to like 80% ready, you know what it all needs to do, and then you're using the cloud because you know you're only going to run a few passes through it at the max, and then that all makes sense. And I think that's the logical way to do it.
Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Making It Happen by Sims. Today we're going to take a deep dive into designer and manufacturer of multi-GPU workstations, Renderboxes, based and building out of the UK, I believe, actually near us in Kent, in where we are based in Lenham, but I think you guys are in, is it Folkestone?
We're in sort of Manston, in between like Ramsgate and Trendy Margate.
There you go, Trendy Margate, Dreamland.
Trendy Margate.
But yeah, anyway, joining us from Renderboxes today is founder and CEO Richard Rogers. How are you, Rich? Today, you all good?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm getting into the festive spirit.
Yeah.
I'm ready to close the doors down to HQ for probably about 3 minutes and then back in here. So
you're going to have Christmas Day off and that's it? So.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because NVIDIA in their infinite wisdom wants to release lots of new things in January. It's obviously like how you just mentioned us, multi-GPU, right? It's like it's the kind of it's the foundation of a render box.
Yeah.
So whenever new stuff's released by NVIDIA, why they're doing it right bang in the middle of January, I don't know. But so January is going to be completely bonkers for us. And because they've kind of gone a bit Apple-esque of late, I don't give away anything until there's this big, announcement by Jensen. We're just kind of sitting there ready to pounce on all of it. So yeah, I'm going to have about 2 sleeps and then probably drink 100 cups of coffee a day until we've nailed everything, and then release the new models.
Well, that's exciting. And to be honest, I know it's a bit of work now, but it's exciting way to start the year. But yeah, we'll get into Renderbox in a minute. So yeah. I think just first for the audience, I think something I like to do with all my guests is just to give a bit of an introduction to yourself.
Yes.
And your background and your journey to Renderboxes, and then we'll get on to Renderboxes.
Okay, all right. I'll give you the condensed story, all right? Because so basically my background, I was actually Apple for quite some time, maybe kind of about 18 years. So kind of, I suppose, going into like the original G3s, G4s, so when it was all PowerPC based. I suppose when you could say Apple was much more of a creative IT company, when Steve Jobs was still with us. So our clients, and this was when I was in London, originally from Southeast London. So when Steve Jobs passed, a lot of the clients that I was working with, which was anything from cinematographers to colorists, early 3D stuff, animation, GPUs were starting to become something, right? So yeah. I don't know what we're kind of talking about, like early Quadro, before RTX and everything. And a lot of clients had started saying, right, we're just dabbling with 3D rendering. We're starting to look at it, Final Cut and Media Composer from Avid and whatnot were all starting to look a little bit like that. But then all these render engines were coming out that were GPU based. And I kind of started modding the cheese grater Mac Pro, like the 2009, I think up to 2012, because Apple wasn't bringing anything out.
Yeah.
And then Steve Jobs passed, and it was like all these clients are asking for more GPUs. Nvidia had kind of fallen out of bed with Apple, so that there was an issue there. All that was left were these beta drivers that would allow these cards to work. So we was kind of modding the Mac Pro. We designed a new power supply, all sorts, and you know, we was getting customers, anything from Dolby to little post houses in Soho, saying, "Great, we can put a few GPUs into these Mac Pros." But obviously, that was definitely flogging a dead horse, right? There wasn't the Mac Pro, you know, the trash can thing came out,
Yeah,
and that just made matters even worse. So it was kind of at that point I could see that this chasm was opening up for people that wanted to do GPU compute. They were looking at render engines that could support multi GPUs, and Apple just really wasn't. Sorry about that. Apple wasn't bringing anything out. So, cut a long story short, I'd started in PCs like in the 90s, like so many did. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to jump ship and start going back to PC, trying to convince that Mac audience that we had that don't worry about the OS, don't worry about the hardware, just try and think of your apps, you know, and if it means that, and this was even before Blackmagic had brought out or bought Resolve. So we was kind of trying to cater for all of these people, and I went to HP and started looking at the Z series of workstations. Became indirectly like a reseller for those, but I was hitting the same wall again. It was like they can only take a couple of GPUs. So I think by now people have started using the GeForce cards because it was a cheaper alternative to using the more costly Quadro. And I could just see this, as I said, like this chasm opening up of there really could be something in this if we decided to literally design a system, look at it from the GPUs, start with the GPUs, start with the heat that's coming from them, the cooling for them, and then move on to the rest of the system, rather than, you know, typically always looking at the CPU, the RAM, and then building out from there. How can we work with a PCIe bus within a Windows system and just use it to its full advantage? So all kinds of wizardry started going on, really like upskilling myself overnight how to work with PCIe in a more efficient way. Designed the first system, which was the Molecule. That was a 7-way 1080 Ti liquid cooled system. It was about the size of a small fridge. And weighed about 100 kilos. So we fabricated all the chassis, had it all done here in Kent. It was all laser cut, sort of gave it this very ominous kind of stealthy black powder coated look. And the first client that had that kind of entrusted us, if you like, that was a client that was Apple based, commissioned that first build. And I think I was doing some work with the BBC and got the machine. 2 weeks later, said we need another one.
Yeah.
A month later, we need another one. And their workflow changed overnight. They literally couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe how much more, you know, rendering's just a complete pain. Anyone will tell you, right? And it just, it hogs up the resources on your workstation if you're not doing any kind of network rendering. And they just said, like, this is an absolute game changer. So that got the ball rolling on it. Then we went into started getting calls from really random companies, JD Sports, and it was like, you know, like it was their architectural division.
Yeah,
JD Sports own as much property as they do sell trainers. So they was like, we can just do quicker rendering. So I suppose what I saw was that this niche was actually much bigger than I thought.
right. Yeah.
And people just kind of couldn't get enough of it. So fast forward about a year and a half, the kind of company became a thing in 2018, and was having a lunch in Soho. New clients were coming on board, and they're like, "We'll get back to you on Monday." And that Monday was when COVID started.
Yeah.
So, all this time and effort had been going in, completely self-funded. The R&D was all done in-house. I mean, it couldn't get more homegrown than than how I'd created Renderboxes.
Yeah.
So I thought, do I stop now and sit on the sofa and get drunk like everybody else, or do I just keep going? So obviously it was a full-on lockdown. I was quite lucky to have some space at my house in the garden. I built workshops. I built like a mini factory that only I was working in. And just as I started getting ready to manufacture from home, NFT started and Bitcoin mining really kicked off.
I remember the NFT stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I had this whole new demographic calling up, saying like, we're going to all of the big, manufacturers, the big 3 or 4 of them, and they're giving us like no lead time on workstations because there was chip shortages. Nobody could work out logistics. Everything was just mental, right?
Yeah.
So sort of through all those years of Apple moving into the early Renderboxes stuff, I was just calling up like every manufacturer and just saying, can you just like drip feed us whatever you can, because we've got people ready to do it. We had a factory that was still prepared to go in and laser cut our chassis, and deliver in like a hazmat suit. So it was a very wild and far out time. And I suppose by the time that we had come out of COVID, the Renderboxes kind of brand weirdly had become something, and like we had, whether it was NFT artists that were obviously massive on social media, that was their thing.
Yeah.
So they're talking about us. That's then going to all of these other small 3D artists that had either lost their job or have gone freelance. So that all started opening up. And then obviously people started going back to work and then mentioning us to their bosses.
Yeah.
So then we had these companies then calling us. So it was really hitting it in all these different areas that I completely wasn't, I couldn't see it happening, basically.
It sounds like a lot of it's word of mouth stuff, but you started in 2016, obviously we're at COVID time now. You're doing all of this on your own, or have you got people involved?
Yeah,
so you've done it all on your own?
Yeah, up until coming out of COVID, it was pretty much a one-man band. Obviously, I had freelance guys that worked with us.
Yeah.
Or I'm saying us, it was the royal we, right? At that point, we just started looking at how to do what we now class as like decoupling the GPUs.
Right. Okay.
So what I mean by that is the Nano, which was a model that we brought out because of COVID. So because the bigger machines were liquid cooled, people were worried that either they didn't have space in their, trendy Shoreditch flat where they were working from, or they were worried about the maintenance of liquid cooling.
Yeah.
They were worried about the cost because obviously these were like these 7 GPU machines. They were not cheap. So I kind of already had drawn up the idea for the Nano, and basically that's fully air cooled, and the whole idea was to get the GPUs. It could hold 4 GPUs and decouple them from the motherboard. So what I mean by that is, think of the Nano almost like 2 tiers of a workstation. The bottom is holding the CPU, motherboard, all the normal stuff, power supplies, and then we extend the PCIe slots up into this chamber, which we kind of dubbed the GPU chamber, and that's then got its own cooling. So you're creating effectively 2 cooling zones. So you're not transferring any of the heat from the lower half into the top half and vice versa. Now, the reason I did that was because, as I said earlier, whether it was a HP Z workstation, whether it was the Apple Mac Pro, the reason I don't think they was ever putting more than 2 GPUs in there was the space, because GPUs are getting bigger and bigger physically, but also because of the heat that they were starting to let out, and it was just too much for like this small tower.
Yeah.
So that kind of took quite a bit of working out. Started having to work with PCB designers and literally designed like this whole system that was decoupling the GPUs. And again, released that. And I think even now, you know, we're 6 years into Renderboxes, and people still, when they find us now, they're still like, I don't understand what this is, because nobody else does it.
Yeah.
You get it in servers, so you'll get it in like an enterprise server, you know, where you have the daughter board sitting at the back, and you know, effectively you're using Slim SAS or now MCIO to break the motherboard away from where you're going to put all these GPUs.
Yeah.
So it was basically taking that idea and then and finessing that into a desktop form factor.
Yeah.
It's not cheap to do that. You know, we've never kind of claimed to be the cheapest workstation manufacturer out there, but what it does allow you to do is what no other workstation can do, and that is hold 4 full-size GPUs in a desktop system that effectively goes under your desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, that's kind of, that took us up to coming out of COVID. At that point, then it was evident that the market was definitely there. It was the right decision to start Renderboxes, and you know, the clue is in the name, right? It is Renderboxes. We're completely and totally dedicated to machines that render and everything that goes around that. You know, we don't kind of make a gaming version or, you know, make something for any other genre of creative artists, like we really are for rendering.
Yeah.
So I decided then to start looking at smaller models, so that would sort of bring that price entry point, you know, down to more affordable, especially like maybe content creators or people just getting into 3D rendering. And now we're up to 9 models now. The last model that we've just released, called the Photon, is kind of geared at Unreal artists, so virtual production. It's a completely transportable unit. It goes into like a Peli flight case. You can fly with it. You know, you can. I mean, we're even talking to a company now in the US that do mobile battery that goes into a Peli case that can run for like 8 hours with the system at full tilt. So you really could put that into the back of, you know, a Jeep and go into the middle of nowhere. And, you know, whether that was, I don't know, doing like live capture with LiDAR scanning or virtual production in the middle of nowhere, and you can pull this all out and start working. So again, we've opened that niche a bit more now. But, you know, we're still not kind of seeing much competition in these areas. Yeah. I'm saying that, then it'll...
You're saying it now, yeah, it'll all come out. But no, I think that's a really interesting timeline, and I'm now just thinking from the customer perspective. Obviously, the benefits they have for this, and obviously they're getting a render box with the latest, the enterprise kind of components and all the best with the kind of stuff. But what's really different is obviously that they're not rendering, they're talking to the cloud. This is all edge AI kind of stuff, really, which is really now, you guys have been doing this for some time, but you're seeing this stuff in the market, and even liquid cooling. I've spoken to server builders and all sorts of people over the last few years, and that's now becoming much more prominent. But you guys have been doing this for some time, and it's very much that edge AI, having it next to you. The rendering situation is where the benefit is.
Yeah, so I mean, what we found is in COVID, obviously everybody all of a sudden had to change their workflow. So if you think about it, like with just typical 3D artists, they might have been working at a company. That company's got their own workstations. All of a sudden, nobody's allowed to come into the office. So what do? Some companies were giving them the workstations to work from home. Some of them didn't want that. There might have been IP, working on feature films, whatever. They can't leave the premises, so they're on-prem workstations. People are remoting in. Everybody's got consumer broadband lines. Then they get issues with latency. So there was kind of all of these caveats to what, because everyone was doing it on the fly, right? Because he was prepared for it. So we lost. It wasn't so much that we lost customers to cloud-based, but they were like, do we buy a workstation or do we go on the cloud? What we found by the end of COVID is that with so many especially with a lot of the freelancers, all of a sudden those iterations that they have to do on a job, and there might be 100 iterations, and you're doing that per frame. All of a sudden they're like, my budget's completely gone out the window, and whether it is AWS or whoever, they're like, I've had to make all these changes, keep on re-rendering, and I've just blown my budget.
Yeah.
So I stand by this like really firmly, that I think that hybrid model, you've got your local compute, right? So that's, we call it agile compute. That's kind of our key phrase now. That's next to you. And that investment that you've made into that machine, it's not going anywhere, it's with you. So if you're getting that project up to like 80% ready, you know what it all needs to do, and then you're using the cloud because you're only going to run a few passes through it at the max, and then that all makes sense. And I think that's the logical way to do it. And that's what we're finding now. We're finding that people are like, right, okay, yeah, let's invest in some hardware again. And we're working with universities now, where they really like the idea of being able to get like an 8 GPU molecule, and that's it's on casters in our big burly case, and literally just walk it from one area to another. Right, these students are going to be doing this rendering today. They're down the hall. We'll take the machine down there, plug it in there, and then they've got this powerhouse render farm, and then they're finished, and then it gets taken somewhere else, and they're like, this is great, So I'm obviously really proud of kind of where we've got to, but I think the biggest thing for me is just taking that risk on really doing something different. And I do believe it really is a different way of looking at compute, is paying off, and it's really helping a lot of customers. So and that's kind of where we've got to now. Every year we're growing about kind of 30%. Next year's going to be even wilder, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it sounds it. And I mean, this is all really, really fascinating. So it sounds like there's obviously been a lot of, you've set a lot of learning from yourself, a lot of R&D testing, but, what are some of the biggest challenges that you found with this business and moving it forward?
So some of the biggest challenges, I'd say that the biggest one is because we straddle kind of between enterprise and I don't know, prosumer, not quite sure, so we work really closely with AMD. The Threadripper is what allowed us to do so much of the stuff that we do. And at first, trying to get into those R&D teams and really dig deep into the hardware, maybe ask questions that nobody else has asked them before, because we use some of the kit in unconventional ways. That was quite challenging, because it's kind of like, hold on, who are you? And, you want schematics for motherboards, and you want to sort of dive deep into our BIOSes. We literally tune everything from the BIOS, custom BIOSes that go into all of our machines, right up to our cooling system, which on the next Nano that's going to be coming out in 2025, we've got a microprocessor on that now talks directly to NVIDIA GPUs. So we're actually even bypassing the BIOS, and it can talk directly, and the fans that call those GPUs are actually just working in tandem with the GPUs. So again, it's that no instruction book comes with any of this stuff,
No.
So when you reach out to the companies, obviously we have fantastic relationships now. I think we was talking before about Micron, and working with you guys with them. We're now looking at like Gen 5 U.2 technology on how to get, maybe anything up to like 1/4 petabyte into a workstation that's sitting under your desk, that's running at 20 gig a second, data coming in and out. So then you go and talk to your film guys with that, and you're like, so you're ingesting all this media coming off your 8K cameras, or even 12Ks on the horizon. that file size is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So being able to do all of this stuff again in this small agile machine, is far out, but it does come with its challenges of heat is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, it's cool.
We did have one customer, their boiler went, and
right,
they had a fully loaded molecule.
Okay.
Put it in their kitchen.
And
right. They had their team remoting into the machine because it was putting out 3.2 kilowatts of heat.
Oh my!
They said it heated their house for 5 days.
Oh wow! Well, I always thought the oven in my house did a pretty good job.
Exactly.
I need to get myself a phone for next year.
I don't advise anyone to buy a Renderbox, all right, to do that, but it did that. So I suppose there's another use case for it. So that's kind of that's our biggest thing is working with the heat that comes off these, and obviously the power they consume.
Yeah.
Obviously in this day and age where we're trying to be greener like every day.
Of course,
What we tend to do is, so a customer will come to us and say, I've got a team, there's 4 of us. And we've all got a workstation each, and that might have a couple of GPUs in each one. So let's just say, for argument's sake, each one of those workstations is using 1200 watts, right? 1.2 kilowatts. So you then present them with the idea of buying an 8-way GPU render node, and you say, right, you get this machine, that's going to sit in the corner, and all of your guys are going to render to that. Their workstations are going to be freed up to carry on designing on, because obviously when you start rendering, it's using your GPUs. So then all of a sudden the system might become a bit laggy, or you've just got no GPU headroom.
Yeah.
And then you tell them how much energy it's going to consume. They're like, oh, this sounds terrible. And you're like, yeah, but at the moment, with your 4 workstations that are using 1.2, well, you're actually using 5 kilowatts. This machine is going to use 3.2. So then indirectly, there is an energy benefit to having a bigger system. So, these are like the biggest challenges that we're faced with. And the one after that, which is what we're kind of writing at the moment, is new GPUs coming out, and it's very hush hush. No one tells you anything. So that's what I'll be kind of worried about.
It sounds like that you work with your manufacturer suppliers into good lengths to actually get roadmaps and understand, because you guys are constantly putting the latest and the greatest in your kit to do the best for your customers. But
the latest,
but we're in a different stage at the moment with AI. You guys have technically you've been in this for quite some time, right, in terms of what you guys are doing. But are you finding things now, like you said, much more tougher to move with the GPU side of thing, and there's new iterations and stuff? How's that working? And I suppose nothing really changes in terms of the way AI's move you guys. It's more of the same and just improving the systems, right?
Yeah, I mean, it basically, the long and short is everything wants more power when the new stuff comes out.
Yeah.
And so you've just got to be very mindful of that. I mean, it even goes into, so we sell globally, right? So we're kind of B2B. We don't have any kind of distribution or anything. That may change in the near future. We're not sure yet. But at the moment, it's very much B2B. And because it's global, obviously everybody's got different power setups, right? So we sell into the US quite a lot. US, a standard US breaker, I think, is it 12 amps? So they can't technically from the wall pull more than like 1.6 kilowatts. So that was already on the edge for some of our machines. So they can change their breakers and they can put in a 20 amp breaker, and then, but these are all these tiny things that you find out along the way.
Yeah.
And I remember like the first machine, literally late 2018, and I think it was the customer had one of the ones that I was talking about earlier, the 7-way molecule with the 1080 Ti's, and that I think that was putting about like 1.5, so it was right on the edge. And I just didn't even really think about it. The machine got sent there, and their office kept tripping, and then just like, oh, what's going on? And then of course I was like, oh right, oh okay. So it was fine, the electrician came out, got a new breaker installed, and then they was laughing. It was absolutely fine. But all these little things you've got to try and build into what you're doing. And I suppose that's when you're a small company, you know, and at that point, obviously a startup that is low on resources. It's just you've got to cover so many bases to keep everyone happy.
Yeah, of course.
And again, that's what I'm saying. You'll then go to manufacturers and say, "This is what I'm doing." They're like, "But why? Like, it's all a bit mad. Like, you know, why just go with this solution? It's here. It's all tried and tested." And it's like because we don't want to do that. We want to do something different because we think that the customer base is there for it. So. So yeah, we've got a handle on all that though now. Okay, so anybody listening into the podcast, don't worry, your house won't be tripping. All right, we'll advise you on what you need to get put in place beforehand.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. And in terms of obviously, you mentioned resource there. What does the team look like now compared to obviously you started on your own? How's that sort of developing, and how do you see that moving in the future?
It's fine. Yeah, we've got new guys. We've got new guys here. We've got new guys coming in February. So we're still a small team. There's like 10 of us. But again, it's kind of we've been really fortunate, and this came out of COVID, to get some amazing like freelancers that work with us. So you know, we've got guys that will just come in ad hoc and help us just get things done, and then it's in place. The machines get released, or new GPUs, you know, whatever it is that we need to do to put those changes into place, and then we scale back down to like our small team, and we're just manufacturing then. So yeah, I mean, I think this year, based on some of the talks that we're in at the moment with new clients, some of the higher education stuff, I mean, you know, hopefully that team will double by the end of the year. We've built a new facility out here in Kent. So we've got just over 4,000 square foot of space now, which is quite different to the place that I built in my garden in 2018. So yeah, I mean, we just feel like a formed company now, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think I've seen on your the company's Instagram, you've done some sort of tours of the kit and everything. And is that the new place? That's where you guys are?
Yeah. So we've got like a proper R&D area now. You know, because that's sort of like 50% of what we do. I'll be honest. It's constant. You know, if you want to kind of, as I said, if you want to be on the edge of using the latest and greatest, and doing it in a slightly unorthodox way, it's just test and test some more. So to have a proper kind of area now that's all been built with all forms of test equipment, because we design all the chassis here, that is all fabricated in Middlesex, but we're going to try and bring some of that here as well. So that's kind of workshop stuff. And yeah, it's been quite an adventure, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it sounds it, and it's quite exciting to have you guys around the corner. We do need to pop down, I think, really.
Yes, please do. Yeah, you can have the tour.
So just to sort of finish off, obviously, I always like to have a little look into the future of what's to come with the company in the next 3 to 5 years. Obviously, you've got the Photon, I think, is next up, or is that released? I think
so. That's out now.
That's out now, and then
that's kind of shipping now. But again, there's been like delays with CPU launches and not the launches, but obtaining stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why you get these big launches and then there's no stock. I know. We won't go into that. But yeah, so the Photon's out, and then we'll see what January brings with the Green Company, and then there will be more stuff off the back of that. And I mean, the AI, we've kind of stood back from it. Obviously, our system's completely capable of, you know, running very large models. So we're probably going to start diving into that a bit more. Really quite interested to see how companies might want to be picking up on running like their own local training. Basically, you know, injecting your business into AI. I think we're going to do it here as well. Just basically start feeding my brain into a molecule and see what comes out of that. Quite worrying. So yeah, it's just more. It's more of what we're doing. More of what we're doing, but just bigger and faster and better.
Yeah. No, well, it's brilliant. No, it's been really, really great to talk to you today and get a rundown on the company. Obviously, we will come down and who knows, we might even be able to do some filming with you guys in the future. We've got some ideas
Amazing,
around,
yeah.
but no, I really appreciate you sharing everything with us and telling us about the journey and what's to come. And appreciate you being on the pod today and have a good new year. And I will speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Have a good Christmas and New Year to you guys as well. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Rich. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate.